Yeah, I think this would be a good time to go into our top secret top five here.
Whoa.
And
All
since
right.
we have so much TV and movie news
Sure.
this week, I thought it'd be good to kind of warm us up to talk about that by giving our top five TV shows of all time.
Okay.
But there's one caveat with that.
Okay.
It has to be a TV show that is completed. So it can't be something that's currently running.
Okay. Fair enough. That certainly gives
All
us a
right.
lot to choose from.
Yep.
Can we do this in no particular order since I'm a slacker and didn't number mine?
Oh, you didn't number them.
No, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I numbered mine, but go ahead and do yours in
Okay.
no particular
All
order.
right, no particular order because this would take me a while to boil these five down to which one I like more than the other. So it's all good. If you want to do yours in order, that's fine. But I'll just
All right.
we'll randomize mine. I don't really think that we could talk about great TV shows that have been completed without covering a lot of the ones that I think most people, whether they watched them or not, would consider them landmark shows. You know, shows that really changed the game. And the one that I can think of in our modern era that really pushed the focus more away from movies and more towards television, since a lot of the critics seem to agree that TV is better than movies now. We're kind of in this second golden age of television where the quality of TV is pretty much as high as it could possibly be. That show that I'm referring to would be Lost. A lot of people might disagree, saying it didn't end properly. Well, I'm going to focus more on the spirit of the show here. In my opinion, Lost is probably one of the best pilots in the history of television. Like, as far as it hooks you because you don't have all the answers to all the questions. Like, you've got way more questions than you have answers. It introduces a ton of revolving characters, a very interesting place, and it just does something that very few other shows have been able to do. It introduced this really huge element of mystery back to TV on this island where literally you find out anything can happen. You know, there's like a monster on the island. There's people returning from the dead, so to speak. You know, there's the island has a really checkered past and shady history, and just so many things about that show revolutionized television. That I think was like the first one that really kickstarted the golden age of the 21st century of television. You know, that was the one that kind of got things going. The I Love Lucy, I guess you could say, of the 21st century that really brought about the big change in television, the way we see television, making things an anthology, making things episodic. You know, all of these things. You know, it didn't have to just be like the story of the week kind of thing. The whole thing could be one giant interconnected story, almost like it was a movie unfolding in tiny little chunks. So, in no particular order, I'll put Lost as my five.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I've actually got that in my honorable mentions, but
Okay.
I totally agree with that. I think that's one of the great TV shows of our generation, and it was really a pop culture phenomenon back
It
then.
was.
I mean, it regardless of if you say it ended or not, the right way.
Right.
I think at that point, a lot of people probably had figured out what was going
Yeah.
on the island or whatever. But regardless, it doesn't take anything away from how good that TV show was.
No, that was the first show that I remember as an adult where the events that transpired on that show were a common topic around the office, you know, at work. Like, you see last night's episode, like, you know, what do you think Sawyer's doing? You know, what do you think this is happening? It was like all these people coming up with theories and everything as far as what's actually going on. I agree with what you said. It was definitely, at its peak, it was an absolute phenomenon.
As a little aside here, do you by any chance have the Blu-ray set for Lost?
I do not.
It is really cool. It's actually got like a map and like hidden things on it, and kind of a board game or something like that with it.
Awesome.
So, uh, I don't believe they manufacture it anymore, but you can find it on eBay. But that's a really cool Blu-ray set. You
Awesome.
can pick it up. All right, for my number five, I have a remake of a TV show. It's sci-fi, and that TV show is Battlestar Galactica.
Saw that one coming.
And that is a great TV show if you've never seen it. It has some amazing acting in it, from Edward James Olmos to Michael Hogan, Mary McDonnell, um, and the I could go on and on about the cast, but a really interesting story. Basically, the planet is ruined that they all live on as a entire race. They're trying to find somewhere to call home, and of course, the machines that the humans created to serve them actually turn against them and are trying to kill them, and so they're running from the sidelines. And just a great story. It's interesting for a sci-fi movie because they don't actually like use lasers and photons and stuff like that. Like the ships have nukes. They're shooting like machine guns on the actual little fighter ships and stuff like that. So it's kind of a more realistic approach, if you can call that realistic, you know, with androids and all that. But I love Battlestar Galactica, and that was another show that kind of had a controversial ending to
Yeah.
it, but I thought it ended well.
I think any good show, there's never going to be the perfect ending that satisfies everyone. I mean, there really isn't. Like, even if you satisfy, like, the status quo, there's always going to be that sliver of people who are like, you know, that ending's fucking bullshit. They didn't do it right. Like, even Seinfeld, you know, the biggest thing on television by a huge margin when it ran, even that ending, you know, caught some flack. And I'm like, dude, it's a sitcom. Like, you know, how are you supposed to end it? It's a show about nothing. So
Right.
it's audiences are fickle, man. Like you're never gonna please everybody. You know, some innings are better than others. The Lost inning, I thought, I mean, you know, it could have been better, but I didn't hate it. You know, I thought it answered the big question. You know, what actually happened. But it left you with a few mysteries too, and I think it should.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it can't answer everything. You know, you need to wonder at least a couple things. So it's all good. Okay, so moving on to my number four in no discernible or particular order. I'm going to go with a bit of an underdog here because it only had like 1.5 seasons. I guess you could call it 2 seasons, but the second season was ultra short. That would be a show on CBS called Jericho, which I felt was one of the best written and best acted shows that was on television at the time it was on. Basically, what it's about a little town, I think in Kansas, called Jericho, where this army vet is returning home to his family, I think to claim, excuse me, some inheritance or something like that. And basically, while he's there, the United States gets attacked. They don't exactly know by who, but they look up in the sky and they see like ICBMs screaming over the sky. And the next thing you know, most of the major cities are gone. You know, Denver, DC, all of them have been nuked, basically. So I guess you could say, I mean, right when it kicks off on the pilot, World War III begins. And it's basically just about the exploits of this town that's trying to survive. You know, they're having to deal with things that a lot of us would have trouble identifying with, you know, having ample electricity, having ample food, you know, dealing with people trying to come in the town and steal, you know, all their provisions and stuff, you know, dealing with infighting amongst the citizens. The main character is played by Skeet Ulrich, and his father is actually from Simon and Simon fame. He plays I can't remember the guy's name. Oh, fuck, it's totally escaping me right now. He was Rick Simon on Simon and Simon, but anyways, Gerald McRaney, and he's the mayor of the town. So there's all this infighting among people fighting over food. You know, that luckily they're in the heartland, so there's a lot of farms and stuff, but you know, just all these small town problems, I guess you could say, being exacerbated by the fact that they're in the middle of World War III. They don't know what's going on. There's no television or anything. There's no intelligence coming out of DC. All they know is they've been attacked. They don't know if it's a domestic attack. They don't know if it's, you know, China or Korea or whatever. They're just completely cut off from the rest of the world, basically. And this is the first show, I think, with the exception of Family Guy, that I remember where when the show was canceled, the backlash from the fans was so huge that the network actually responded. Not just with a letter or some kind of bullshit. They brought the show back for a second season, kind of a micro season. They're like, okay, here's the deal. You guys want it back on the air? We'll give you 7 episodes. Give us the ratings, and we'll keep going. Which I think is a fair proposal. I mean, it's like, okay, you know, we'll pay for 7 episodes, which is probably a couple $1 million an episode, probably 14-15 million bucks. And you know, you guys just got to give us the ratings. And unfortunately, the ratings just weren't there. I tuned into every single one. You know, I was Facebooking, tweeting, and all this other shit. Like, guys, watch this show. We got to keep it on the air. Unfortunately, this is before Netflix was actually reviving old shows, because I think they probably would have picked this up. This would have been their cup of tea, but unfortunately, we didn't have another network rescuing this. So they actually shot 2 endings to the second season, just in case it would go one way or the other. And it definitely had a definitive ending. You know, the way that it ended, because it was obviously being canceled. Like, you could see the progression of the way the war was going. There is the alternate ending on YouTube if any of you were curious, and it does end on a cliffhanger. So I thought that was really cool that they did that. I could not talk about shows like this without talking about at least one underdog, and that's solid entry in mine. But what is yours, my friend?
All right, for number 4, I have 6 Feet Under.
Nice.
And this was actually done by Alan Ball, the guy who brought us True Blood, Banshee. It was one of his first TV series. I believe his first was actually maybe Sybil on CBS or something like that. But he's moved on to bigger and better things now. Banshee, if any of you are watching that, you know how good that is. But basically, any show this guy works on is amazing. The reason True Blood fell off is because this guy left to go do other things, and
Ouch.
and that's when True Blood started going downhill. But 6 Feet Under was about the Fisher family, and they ran a funeral home, and basically every episode started off with somebody's death, and then they followed the actual family, I guess, that was, or whoever was around that person, like burying the individual until they were actually buried. And the family was so real. They faced a lot of real problems, and it had such amazing acting in it. And I will say 6 Feet Under probably has one of the best final episodes of any show you will ever see. Definitely check it out, especially if you have HBO Go. All of them are online or on demand. Download them, watch them. It's only like 4 or 5 seasons, but some of the best TV you will ever watch.
I actually have a personal story about 6 Feet Under, sort of. I actually got to meet Freddie Rodriguez once, one of the stars of the show. I was working for a cable company at the time, and this is when 6 Feet Under was at its peak of hype, and he actually came to visit us and just talk to us and stuff like that, and he was there to do pictures and everything. Really freaking tiny dude, man. Like, I put my arm around this guy, and he was like coming up to here. He's like probably 5'6", 5'7", really freaking micro guy, but really, really sweet dude. Like, he really was. He was just the most approachable and lovable guy. You know, thanked you for watching the show. You know, thanked you for everything. Like, oh, have a nice day. Really, really cool guy.
That's cool.
Yeah, man, he's a cool dude. So my number 3. I couldn't do this list without picking one from the 80s. I mean, you know, this is the Nerd Bucket. Tyler and I are both products of the 1980s, so I couldn't go through this list without at least picking one. And I'm going to pick the one that basically, in my eyes, basically defined the 1980s on every level, with music, fashion, just the aura of it, like the attitude, the politics, everything like that. This one show basically completely encapsulated the 1980s.
I have a feeling I know what this is.
This would be Miami Vice.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, I'm sure a lot of you heard this story. There's a very infamous story that goes around about how Miami Vice started, where Brandon Tartikoff, the head of NBC, was at a dinner or some type of conference or something like that, and he, I think it was, he handed Anthony Yerkovich, who created the show, a napkin with 2 words written on it for the show he wanted. It said MTV Cops. And Anthony Yerkovich basically created Miami Vice just based on those 2 words. Like, MTV was starting to get its druthers and was really starting to become a really huge influence on pop culture. You know, it brought music to television. And, you know, back when MTV actually played fucking videos, but, you know, the internet, I guess, kind of replaced that. And everything about the show, the pilot, again, one of my favorite pilots of all time, because it plays like a movie. You could almost take that by itself, and it would be like one of the perfect 80s action films, because it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It does end on sort of a cliffhanger, because it's the 2 guys coming together to basically to become partners, but you could really call that a movie. And for any of you who have not seen it, guys, I think the whole thing is on Netflix. I cannot recommend it enough. If you are a product of the 80s like we are, guys, the fashion. I mean, like, Don Johnson not wearing socks on that show cut sock sales 30%. I'm not exaggerating. That is a fucking fact. That is, I mean, that is how much impact this show had on the American populace. just the suits, you know, with the T-shirt and everything like that. I mean, these guys are driving Ferraris and shit. I mean, the colors of Miami. You know, every single episode had like a top 5 song on it. You know, it was like the first TV show to feature pop music, basically. You know, pop culture music in every single episode. Not just usually one song, usually 2 or 3. You know, Genesis. You know, some of the hair metal bands. Whitney Houston, all of them, you know, did songs. Not to mention the sheer amount of actors that are huge draws now that came out of that show, that were on that show. Fucking Bruce Willis, Tom Sizemore. Like, you just go down the list of people who were just starting out. So you get to see Bruce Willis pre-Moonlighting, which was really, really freaking crazy. You know, all this huge cavalcade of stars who went on to so much bigger and better things. And it's beautifully acted. The ending, it did kind of lose its way right around the end, right around the time Don Johnson got a mullet. But you know, it got kind of silly, and it was definitely kind of wearing out its welcome. I think it probably went for about 1 season too long. I think 4 seasons probably would have been perfect. It ran for 5, but it's every time I want to get a little bit of nostalgia when it comes to television, dude. I can watch any episode of Miami Vice, and boom, I'm there. It's the fucking 1980s all over again. So by all means, check it out. Very underrated.
Good choice.
Thanks, man.
All right. On my number 3, I have, of course, one of the greatest sitcoms of all time, Seinfeld.
I knew this was coming. That's why I didn't pick it.
Had to be on the
I
list.
knew you would pick it, so I didn't pick it.
But I mean, every episode is a classic. I mean, you know, you can pick out one thing from pretty much every episode, and you know, you will know that episode, like Man Hands, the Bubble Boy, Marble Rye,
the shirt,
the Suit Nazi. I mean, yeah, the puffy shirt.
Yeah, the puffy shirt.
But
it's
I mean,
the show literally about nothing. It's just about people living life.
But I mean, I really don't think I have to say much about that. I mean, everybody knows about Seinfeld, but one of the greatest shows of all time, and Larry David was just a genius. Him and Jerry Seinfeld together.
Yeah, have you seen the thing that Jerry Seinfeld has framed in his house?
No, I haven't.
It's like the biggest fuck you to the rest of the world. It's awesome. It's the first piloted test review of the pilot for Seinfeld, where it was one of the lowest ratings that they'd ever gotten for any tested pilot, and he has it framed in his house. And it's the exact pilot that we saw, and for some reason the test audiences just raked it over the coals. But you know, I mean, God, I mean, when that thing was at its crescendo, I mean, Jerry Seinfeld was the highest paid actor in the history of television. They were making like $1 million an episode for a 30-minute sitcom. You know, I think, and I don't think that was surpassed until Friends, where they were making like $2 million an episode, something like that. That was, when Seinfeld was on, I mean, it was a phenomenon. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and the guy still got it. I saw him live. I'd say 2 or 3 months ago, and his stand-up is amazing. He went on for like an hour and a half, hour 45, and just killed. I mean, and he doesn't really work that dirty. I mean, there's some cursing in it, but he works pretty clean. I mean, to be able to laugh that much on, you know, pretty clean material, I mean, you just don't see that much anymore.
It's tough.
Yeah.
We're a pretty jaded audience. So my personal, if you had to pick one for the funniest thing that you could remember about Seinfeld, I'm going to pick one. We'll have you pick one. Mine would be something that I actually considered doing, just to see if I could actually pull this off. It's the episode where Costanza basically hides under his desk for the entire workday. Like, he brings a pillow and he sleeps under his desk, and no one notices he's even gone. And being, you know, a guy who works in an office, I'm like, you know what? I wonder if that would actually work. You know, that seems like a pretty plausible theory. And I don't know, I guess I was really able to relate to that one just because of the type of work that I do. I was like, that's actually kind of brilliant. So
I like the episode where Cosmo just was like up at an office somewhere, and they're like, hey, come on, we're about to miss the meeting. And he goes to the meeting, and like everybody just assumes he works there. As he's like, they're giving him projects and stuff to do, and then I think they eventually fire him. He's like, well, you can't fire me, I don't even work here. But I think that'd be funny to like go somewhere to work and not even actually work there.
I wouldn't be surprised if that would actually work. People are so easily duped. Okay, so excuse me. My next one, and I hope this one isn't on your list because I hate to double up here, but if it is on your list, rock on. I did not watch this one while it was originally on the air, but while it was on the air, I do remember this being kind of a cultural phenomenon. Not quite to the point of loss, but I mean, this probably of any show has the most loyal fan base. I mean, I would say even above Seinfeld, as far as just the rabid, just loyalness of the fan base, man. I mean, these fans are numero uno. Whole conventions based around this, and that would be Joss Whedon's first stab at television, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's I basically just blasted through the sets as they came out on DVD. You know, I was a very late entry to that. I do believe I started watching them as the show was still running. It was probably into season 5 or season 6 when I started watching season 1. And it's all on Netflix, guys. If you want to watch it, I highly recommend it. It really still holds up even today, man. I mean, that's the first television show that I remember watching that really grabbed at my heartstrings, man. I mean, it just really showed how great and brilliant of a writer Joss Whedon is, and how well he can write women. I mean, it's just of any dude who's ever written women, this dude just gets it. I mean, he's all about female empowerment, you know, obviously, you know, if you look at his shows and stuff. And it's just such an interesting universe, you know, that he created with slayers and demons and, you know, vampires with souls and all this other shit. You never knew what was going to happen, you know, werewolves, all kinds of things. And it's just, at the same time, it's an incredibly human show, because it starts out, it's just about a 16-year-old girl in high school. You know, it's just her and her friends having to deal with living on a fucking hellmouth, you know, where anything and everything can crawl out of this thing and threaten the freaking city, town, or even the planet. That one, in my opinion, did have a very satisfying ending, because it made perfect sense to me that the first episode of the show is Welcome to the Hellmouth, meaning, welcome to the shit, man. We're kicking into the deep end, no swimming lessons. And at the end of the show, spoiler alerts, they close the Hellmouth. Like, that's the whole thing, is they go into the Hellmouth to fight, you know, the evil that's inside of it and basically kill it. But it does leave it open at the end. You know, there's word of another Hellmouth opening, you know, in a different side of the country and stuff like that. And this actually has lived on in comic book form, as approved by Joss Whedon. They've done season 8, season 9, season 10, which I thought was really cool. And it's actually written by some of the people who actually wrote the show. So I couldn't talk about a completed show without talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, man. It's just, for me, man, I'm always going to have a soft spot for that. There's so many episodes that just are tear jerkers, because it's so heartbreaking to see what these people have to contend with.
Well, I kind of went in a different direction for my number 2, and I picked Breaking Bad.
Nice.
I thought that was a worthy number 2. You know, when I guess the very first time I watched season 1, my dad and I watched it together. Mm-hmm. And we watched the first season and we're like, oh, you know, this is okay. But the show really transforms from the first season. And you see the progression of Walter White from a chemistry teacher in high school to a drug kingpin. And, you know, the show goes from kind of like a dark comedy to really just this dark show about drugs, and some of the best acting you will ever see on TV. Still one of the grittiest shows I think I've ever seen on cable TV, but a great show. If you haven't seen it, I guarantee you'll love it. Just check it out. It's a great show. Bryan Cranston just knocked it out of the park with this. And if you remember correctly, a lot of the actors, actually, Bryan Cranston was a dentist on Seinfeld. Mm-hmm. The wife, I forget her name, actually played one of Jerry Seinfeld's love interest in an episode. So, I mean, all these people from Breaking Bad actually had original, you know, appearances in Seinfeld. So I thought that was pretty cool.
And Bryan Cranston also voiced one of the supervillains on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Nice.
Most people don't know that. You can't really tell that it's him, but it is actually him. And one of the characters actually on Power Rangers, Billy, his last name is named after Bryan Cranston. His name's Billy Cranston. And Bryan
Okay.
Cranston has admitted in public, he's like, that's not a coincidence. It was one of the writers basically just naming him after me. So awesome. Okay, so not my number one, but just in no particular order. I could not mention this without this show. Um, One of the best first seasons ever. One of the best pilots ever. One of the most well written shows in history. That would be Prison Break. I mean, just the whole concept of an entire season based around guys basically staging breaking out of a maximum security prison is fucking brilliant. I mean, there's no two ways about that. It's, Link, this one guy basically gets wrongly accused of murder, gets sent to a maximum security prison, and his brother Michael, who happens to be this brilliant engineer and architect, and since they don't have the same last name, no one knows that they're actually related, even though they are blood related. Basically gets himself arrested to get himself sent to prison, but has the wherewithal to have the designs of the prison tattooed on his body using like hieroglyphs, basically, so that no one else can spot it. So he basically goes in there with a specific purpose of trying to break him out. And just the twists and turns and just being able to see Michael, think on his feet and improvise. Like, this guy is like fucking Batman. Like, he's always 5 steps ahead of you. He's always got a plan. He always has a strategy. And it was so well conveyed in season 2, since season 1 basically ends with them breaking out of the prison. In season 2, they're on the run. When it's him and William Fichtner going head to head, and he's got Fichtner, who's the guy, he's the FBI agent or whatever that's tracking him and trying to put him back in jail. And he's got him locked up in front of him in a cell, and he says to William Fichtner, he's like, "It doesn't matter what you throw at me, I will beat you every single time." And he just says it with this fucking nail-driven, razor-sharp delivery where you just absolutely believe it. Like, dude, you cannot beat this guy. Like, he is always going to be ahead of you. He's always going to have a plan. He's always going to have an exit strategy. And just the acting from everyone involved on the show, man, was just so freaking top notch, man. Like, the characters in the prison, just the criminals that they have to consort with, to get in on the gang, basically to be part of the escape plan. Just the twists and turns and everything, just the sense of danger when they're trying to escape. And every time it would cut to commercial, it had like the most epic bumper on cutting to commercial, where like somebody would be like, and then it'd be like, doon 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 doon, like. I know it sounds cheesy as shit the way I do it, but you're like, holy shit, like every commercial's a cliffhanger. So I'm pretty sure it's still on Netflix, because that's the way that I watched it. I just blasted through it, I think, inside of a week and a half. If you have not seen Prison Break, guys, seriously, you are missing landmark television, and I heard recently they're going to bring it back for one more season. The 2 actors who play Michael and Link are actually on Arrow and Flash. But they're playing the bad guys. Michael plays Captain Cold, and the guy who plays Link plays, it's like Inferno or something like that. They're basically like fire and ice type guy. They're very different characters on this show. Don't get me wrong, because they're criminals. They're not the good guys, and the dynamic that they have. But literally, when they finish up the thing that they're doing for CW, I'm totally brain farting right now. Legends of Tomorrow. When they finish that, according to the actors, they are literally getting on a plane the next day to head off and do Prison Break. So if you like the dynamic that these 2 guys have, definitely watch Legends of Tomorrow. And Prison Break, the new season, apparently will be coming out next year. I'm so stoked for that, although I'm not going to ruin the ending for you guys, but I don't know how they're going to do that, because one of them is fucking dead at the end of the show, very clearly dead. So I mean, but dude, it's Prison Break, anything can happen. There's always some type of MacGuffin or something they can come up with. So definitely a worthy entry on my list. Check out Prison Break.
I'll have to check that out. I've never seen that before.
Oh dude, the first season, you're gonna be like, it can't get better than this. I mean, it just can't. It's just, you were just like, oh, that was good. So yeah, check it out.
But isn't that the best way to watch shows, where you can sit there and binge watch it? I don't have to.
I will fucking challenge you to watch only one episode of Prison Break. I will guarantee you that you cannot watch one. You're gonna watch a minimum of 3. So, anyways, what's your numero uno, buddy? Hit me.
All right, here we go. The number 1 I have is probably not a surprise. It's at a lot of number 1s for TV lists out there, but this is my personal favorite. I usually end up watching this about once a year, and that is The Sopranos.
Nice.
Um,
Good choice.
James Gandolfini is an amazing actor, probably one of the best actors of our time. The way he shows emotion in this, I mean, it's so visceral. Just the fury he shows in the show. I mean, and the way he balances his family life, the
Hmm.
family life, of the mob, and it's really a great show. Yeah, it's started a lot of acting careers on
Okay.
that show, and a lot of the actors on the show were actually from older mob movies and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So I thought that was neat how they kind of borrowed from like Goodfellas and other mob shows like that. But that was another show that had a very controversial ending, and I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but I thought it was brilliant. I was one of the people that actually liked the ending of that show. So that is my number one, guys. I hope you enjoyed this new top five list. I kind of like this addition to the show,
I do.
and maybe we don't do it every week, but
Yeah.
we'll try and
We'll
do
come
a,
up with
a
top
top
fives.
five. Yeah,
I
yeah.
have another very quick personal story actually about Sopranos, and it's almost in the exact same context as my last one. So again, working at a cable company, you kind of meet people like this. Big Pussy actually came into the office one time.
Okay, cool.
Vincent Pastore, I think is the actor's name. All right,
Hmm.
first he's a big dude. Like I'm not a small guy, but I was like, holy shit! Like you really are a big pussy. Okay, so the funniest thing happened. So, guys, I was working at a call center for one of the big cable companies out there. I won't say which, but it's definitely one of the ones you've heard of. And he came in. It was, I think Sopranos was in season 2, so it was all the buzz and everything. And he was coming out just meeting everybody and everything. And he actually got on the phone with the person who was sitting, I think, 2 seats down from me because they wanted to cancel HBO. He personally got on the phone and he talked them back into keeping it. And they were like, "Well, who are you?" He's like, "Well, I'm Big Pussy." And they're like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "Big Pussy. I'm on Sopranos." And pardon my incredibly bad Big Pussy accent, but he actually talked them back in. He's like, "Well, why do you want to cancel? It's a good show. You should keep it." And he actually talked them back into it. I was like, "This is before like cell phone footage was like a thing. Like you were lucky to have one with a picture. This would have been like YouTube gold." Like seriously, if I had a freaking phone back then, I would be making like thousands of dollars a month. This would be like a billion hit video. And it was so amazing just to see like this dude like use his acting skills basically to help his bottom line, which I thought was absolutely amazing. So, yes, this was a really great segment, man. Hopefully we can come up with more top fives in the future.
As another little aside to The Sopranos, I know I was reading an article or either watching something on TV that a lot of the people that were actually monitoring like actual mobsters in the FBI,
Right.
like I guess they had phone taps and stuff, and they said it was always fun to go into work on Monday after The Sopranos aired because they would all be like talking about The Sopranos that they had watched the night before,
Nice.
and they would always be like, "Man, how do they know that's how it is?" And I mean, like, so apparently it was very real to the or
Yeah.
close to the real thing, because these mobsters in real life were like saying how realistic that the show was, and they all watched it and all that. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Awesome.